Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, what is up, man? How's it going? You've been enjoying a lot of different sports lately, even with the NFL season ending.
Oh yeah, we had the hockey All Star game, Four Nations Face Off. I try to watch a little bit of everything. Hard to keep up with some of the sports like soccer and hockey when you're so focused on the traditional big three. But that was fun. I'm excited. World Baseball Classic is always fun too to cheer on your country when that comes around. And that's something that was similar to the NHL Four Nations Face Off. So had me thinking about that a little bit. But also, it's good to have spring training games back is something to kind of track along the way. There's not all of them are televised. Not all of them. I think you can get radio broadcasts for all of them, but you can't all see all of them. But it's good to have a little bit of baseball back with a little bit more excitement now that Terry Francona is at the helm.
Yeah, I saw a 2017, I think it was, promo with Terry on it when he was with the Guardians right after they had lost the World Series. So I was like, oh, that's our manager, which was pretty cool to see. But today, in our topics, Joe, we are going to be discussing the start of spring training baseball, this week's games, the new Amazon Prime deal, Joe. That one is very interesting to me. And then we're going to be giving you guys our infield predictions. So, as always, make sure to let us know in those comments below if that is, or what your infield predictions are going to be. Don't cheat. Don't wait until Joe and I are done. We're probably not going to be right anyways. So, you might as well give us yours because this one's going to be probably our most contentious one. I don't know. The outfield might be pretty crazy too. We thought infield would be easier, and then we were talking before this, and I don't know if either of us know what's going to happen with the infield, but we'll figure that out. Also, make sure to like and subscribe. As always, we appreciate all of you who have been starting to join us as we get ready for the season. We will continue to do this podcast every single week as we get ready for the season. But our question of the day, Joe, is going to be, what do you look forward to? Or what do you look for, I guess, in general, for spring training? What are the things that you were looking at? You and I have discussed it a little bit. I'll start real quick with just, I like to see where are people playing? What are they trying to accomplish, right? You got to keep in mind, there's a goal for every player, Joe, with spring training, right? We saw Hunter Green already. We saw Ellie, right, with his new stance. Where are people playing? I think is going to be a big one, especially as we talk about the infield. Those are the kinds of things that I am looking for, Joe. What about you?
Yeah, I mentioned before, I don't really look at the established players as much. This is just a proving ground for me for the guys who are going to make the back half of the roster. And we have a lot of guys who are fighting for the last couple of spots,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why we can't really agree on an infield. I'm assuming we can't agree on the outfield, and also
Probably
because
not.
of what positions they're playing as well. But that is kind of what I'm looking at is those guys who are trying to make the roster. If you want to look at some of the premier guys and say, hey, I want to see what they're doing well or what they're not doing well, just kind of track velocity, see if they're going to be pitching as much as maybe they would later on in the season. I know Terry says he wants his pitchers ready to go at the start of the season. So just watching those little things I think is important to see while not trying to judge a full performance of like, hey, if Joey Votto has a bad spring, I just don't care. So
Yeah. It can go both ways, right? You can see a guy like CES who has an outstanding spring and then does nothing to start the season, right? It's all a mishmash of things. So keep that in mind. But we did have some spring training action this past week, Joe. Finally, on Saturday we got a split game, which was surprising. A split squad. I was not expecting that to start off the season. I heard Tommy Thrall on the radio saying that they're starting the spring training season with split squad and they're ending it with a split squad series, which was interesting. But the Reds, the one good of the weekend, the Reds beat the Guardians 6-3. Ellie with two mammoth home runs from both sides of the plate. Something that I think is exciting. His swing did look a lot more compact, Joe, which is something that I was very happy to see. Personally, Hunter Green went two, gave up two, but did strike out three. That's just some early season stuff, nothing too much, to read into probably there. But the Reds then lost to the Brew Crew as well on that same day. They kept getting ahead and then getting behind. Walk-off given up by Alan Busnitz, who, in my opinion, if we never hear his name again, at least on this team, then that is fine with me. Graham Ashcraft and Chase Petty looked solid in their spring training debuts with Ashcraft as a starting pitcher, which was interesting. Gavin Lux had 2 hits, 3 RBIs, and Santiago Espinal with a home run for his first hit of the spring season. Then Sunday, the Reds would go on to lose 5-2 to the Giants. Espinal again with a 3-bagger. Rhys Hines with his first one as well. Nick Martinez was in as a starter and looked solid. Josh Stomont, somebody who we were talking about, who we know is battling for a position at the end of the bullpen, pitched well. And then I wanted to give a little shout out to Reiver San Martin, somebody who I thought was looking pretty good, then had an injury with the 4 lefties probably above him. Most likely won't make the team, but he did not look very good, unfortunately. But, we'll have to see what happens there. Joe, what are your initial thoughts from these first 3 games? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, the LA2 home runs are great. The broadcast was messed up with their exit velocities because they said one of them was 77
Yeah, I
miles
was wondering
per
about
hour
that.
exit velocity. that was messed up. But yeah, I think Ellie, that was good to watch his swing development. It looks like there's less of a hole in his swing. Mm-hmm. That'll be huge as he tries to cut down strikeouts, which some of it is still his eyes and not just his swing. So we'll have to watch how he tracks the ball in spring training as well. I love the fact that Santiago Espinal got his big start to spring. I want to see him as a utility guy for us on the bench, as we'll get into a little bit later here. And we also, I think, got some answers with some guys, too. I don't know. Terry Francona just said Nick Martinez is a starter, so we have to go on that now. It's either a 6-man rotation or a 5-man rotation, and one of the young guys is out, which is, hey, if that's what he wants to do, I trust Terry. But then we have Graham Ashcraft, who we thought might be, okay, there's no shot he makes the rotation. Now he's starting this game. I would have thought that if they wanted him to get used to being a reliever, they would have not started him, even though he is only pitching 2 innings. I think bringing him in later in the game, just getting him into a routine if he wants to have a shot to make this roster is great. But I think they're prioritizing having a lot of starting pitchers and having some of them start in AAA, is for what it sounds like, or if people get injured, maybe start in the majors, and then kind of just blow through arms. Whether that's a 6-man rotation or someone gets injured, someone else is ready to go. That's what it looks like based on how things have lined up. And then the last point for me, Gavin Lux has drawn a lot of talk about him in kind of the Reds online space and not being an everyday player. I think you have to find a spot for him.
Yeah.
To be honest, he's hitting the ball obviously in spring, which again I don't care about as much, but he hit the ball last year. I get that he's not going to play second base. That's Matt McClain. He did play second base in the spring, but you need to find a way, whether that's third base or DH, to find him a spot in the lineup for most games. It doesn't have to be every game, but most games.
Yeah, he's a guy who I would love to see play 145 games. 145 games. That'd be awesome. I will say, I wonder if it's the Rhett Lauder part of this, that he is dealing with that shoulder injury, that he may not start on the roster because of it, unfortunately. I think that may end up being what happens, Joe, if I'm being honest with you, with the Nick Martinez thing. I think for Graham, I think he probably just wants a shot, Joe, to be able to maybe pitch his way onto, into contention, right? All it takes, as you've talked about, is 1 or 2 injuries. The next thing you know, Graham Ashcraft is starting, every game, right? So every 5 days. So we will have to see. I'm intrigued by that as well. Those were my big notes, to be honest with you as well. I think the Gavin Lux situation we're going to talk about, I think, extensively here with our infield predictions, Joe. At least I plan on doing it, so I'll save it for that. But I'm going to just straight up tell the Reds community right now, you guys, look me in the eyes. Gavin Lux was traded for to play on a regular basis. I love Santiago Espinal, not as much as Joe does, but a lot. I have come to respect him. But that man is an actual utility guy, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to be a starter. At least I would not personally start him over Gavin Lux. But I do think that Gavin Lux is going to play a lot. And I think they are going to teach him every position possible to get his bat in the lineup. So we will dive more into that later, Joe. But it seems like you have a thought on this. Do you want to wait?
No, I just people are putting like CES in the starting lineup over Lux, and then we'll get to that. We'll get to that part, but then also because we're talking about our base possibly here, Melve Marte got a walk. He only had walked 9 times in his last 240 plate appearances.
Yeah,
I think the Gingosaurus Rex on Twitter was the one who tweeted that out. But that could be huge if he can actually see the ball well, because that was, I don't think it was a swing issue with him. I really do think it was just he wasn't seeing the ball well and a confidence issue. So that was
Yeah.
another small, like there's a bunch of small nuggets in spring training. That's just like one to follow. If you take some walks in spring training, maybe he's showing some evolution as a hitter, and that could help him possibly make the roster. But again, we'll save that talk for the later portion of this.
Yeah, and we'll pop in real quick to this week's games because we're gonna get a lot of action this week. There will be a lot more. There will be a lot more for us to know for next week's episode. But the Reds are going to be playing the Dodgers today. The Angels on Wednesday, the Diamondbacks on Thursday, the A's on Friday, the Padres on Saturday, and the Cubs on Sunday. They get one day off. They are getting Tuesday off. That is it. So they will have played what? 9 games? Yeah, 9 games in, I don't know, 9 days essentially, because you have the one day off plus the split squad. So definitely a lot of Reds baseball coming, Joe. We'll have to see. There's been no announcement of the lineup or pitching rotation for the Dodgers game, as far as I know, Joe. I have not seen it, so you guys will have to check back. But there will be a lot more nuggets for us to go over in next week's episode, and that's going to be a lot of what we are going to do. Is we're going to take what we are seeing and we are going to analyze it and talk about where they need to get better, kind of, all that fun stuff, especially once we get into the regular season. So that's mostly for all of you new subs, and all maybe you new viewers. But let's hop into this too, Joe. Last thing before we get into our infield predictions here. The FanDuel Sports Network announced the Cincinnati Reds schedule, where they are actually going to be doing something that I think you and I were hoping for, which they're going to be giving a pass out to Amazon Prime subscribers. You have to be a Prime subscriber first, so keep that in mind. But you are going to be able to watch games on, or well, I guess you don't have to be necessarily. You can be as an Amazon Prime subscriber and get this stuff. But there will be a monthly plan that you can get for $19.99 per month through the FanDuel Sports app, network app, excuse me. There's a season pass, which is $109 or $105.99. Interesting. Can't say I've ever seen $105.99 before. And then adding on to that, you can start pretty much just a couple days ago for $122.99, Joe, to get spring training access games. And apparently this will include Columbus Blue Jacket and Cleveland Cavaliers packet or stuff during the Reds season. And then if you want an annual pass every year, $189.99. And that includes Reds, Blue Jackets, and Cavs all year round. Joe, I think this is kind of the way baseball is going. We also saw ESPN and MLB have their breakup coming. I believe it's next year will be their last year of coverage. We're starting to see that more and more with different sports organizations kind of going off and doing their own thing. I think this is just the beginning for not only the Reds, but for baseball into really getting into subscription services. I am only shocked at how long it took, because I thought maybe they would move out of some of their deals, but I think most of this is just because a lot of deals are kind of coming up at this point, right? So these are going to be the new ways that they're going to try to make some money off of us, Joe. But what are you feeling with this Amazon Prime deal? I believe also there are going to be no blackouts, as far as I know. If I remember correct, watching or reading this correctly, there will be no blackouts for Reds baseball, unlike with the MLB.com subscription.
Yeah, this doesn't change much for the Reds. This is the same deal that they have with FanDuel.
Yep.
This doesn't change much even for the fans. It just makes it a little bit easier. So this is like the same pricing you could get if you just bought the FanDuel Sports Network channel online, but this will make it so you can just watch it through Amazon on your TV. Like, you could theoretically pull up the FanDuel Sports Network and then like stream it to your TV. I'm sure there's an app for it, but this makes it like maybe lessen the clutter on your TVs, maybe, of all the apps everyone has on their smart TVs now. So it's a good partnership, probably. I'm sure Amazon's still looking at possibly doing more baseball games in the future, and wanting to have more of a presence there. And this is maybe a way they can do that while FanDuel maybe gets paid for it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is just like making it a more brand recognizable thing where everyone knows Amazon, so they can go buy it on Amazon. Whereas if you have 50, 60, 70-year-old Reds fans. They may not know what FanDuel Sports Network is, to be honest. So it makes it easier for the fans. It's good for me. It doesn't change anything for the Reds. Gives them more visibility, I guess, but doesn't give them any more money. So I'm excited to watch it. I'll probably do it through this route rather than doing the FanDuel Sports Network route. It doesn't, again, it might make it easier, but it doesn't really change anything one way or another.
No, absolutely not. But it is nice that it will be available, like you said. And again, no local blackouts. Just read it here. Big deal for that one, just because I would have gotten MLB TV years ago, Joe. But the fact that I couldn't watch Reds games, I kind of decided that it wasn't worth it for me because that was the main thing I wanted to watch. So definitely starting to get excited for baseball season, though. I'm glad this is going to be here. I will have to figure out if I'm going to be getting this or not as well. I haven't decided yet, to be honest. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay. Infield predictions time. I know that's what a lot of you have been waiting for. Joe, we're going to start off. I think maybe the best way we do this, personally, is maybe we go position by position and we'll start with our starters at each position. And then we'll kind of go with backups afterwards. As a reminder, Joe and I both, between the rotation and the relief pitchers, we got to 13. So if you've been keeping track, we have 13 spots left over for us to pick from. And Joe, I'll just get us started with catchers here. I don't think it's much of a surprise. Tyler Stevenson as the starter at catcher. I think he's primed, honestly, for a great season. I think Trevino is going to be a good guy to back him up. I guess we'll talk about him in a second. I guess maybe you have Austin Wynns instead, Joe. That would be a surprise to, I think, everybody, including yourself, most likely. But I think that he's going to get a lot of time away from behind the plate, but I think he's more primed for a breakout in terms of his bat. I think there will weirdly be more protection for him this year as long as people stay healthy. We talked about him being last year our seventh, eighth best batter in the lineup. But then he ended up having to get more towards the middle as the season went on with all the different injuries and different things that kept happening. And I'm really wanting to see him get a 265, 270 season in with, he had 20 home runs last year, which was great. I would love to see him maybe even up that number a little bit. And I want to see him continue to be a leader on this team. I think he is an extension candidate. Maybe if it's not this season, I believe it might be even next season. I'll have to go look into that. But he's getting better behind the plate. He's calling games better. His play, the pitchers are liking him more. I don't know where he's going to bat in my lineup yet, Joe. Maybe we'll do lineups later, but probably not today. But I think that he is a really solid guy, and I think he was getting very close to cracking the top 10 catchers in baseball near the end of last season.
Yeah, I'm actually going Santiago Espinal for catcher. Never played there before, but I love the guy, so no. It's Tyler Stevenson. Did like how he, I think, played last year, specifically thrust into maybe a role he didn't expect with, hitting higher in the order. We've had him kind of move positions a lot in the last several years, but kind of to settle in at catcher was encouraging, and to improve defensively as well was kind of a theme I saw last year from him. I will be shocked if he's not the starting day catcher. I want him to start 120 games behind the dish. Maybe have some other appearances as the DH and maybe first base as needed. But that is, I think, going to be good to have that solidified role as the catcher like he did last year. As years before, as I mentioned, he moved around a ton. So, and then Jose Trevino is going to back him up. He's a very good defensive catcher. I know, there'll be Austin Wynns people, there'll be other people who want other people there, but he was signed to be the backup catcher. He is a very good backup catcher. He's going to have a lower average. You don't play every day, so it's something to understand. Like, he may hit 210, it might still be a good player for us, because when you only play once every 5 days, once every 4.5 days, whatever it ends up being, that could be tough. So for him, it's just important to be good managing the staff. He's a veteran. A lot of these young pitchers are going to trust him a lot, so making sure he does that, frame pitches, play good defense, and to get the occasional hit to help us out here. So that's what I would have too, is Howard Stevenson as the starter and Trevino as the backup. And I think it's maybe the only spots in camp, outside of maybe shortstop, that is like, we know that guy's going to be playing that spot. I don't know. That's probably the only one.
Yeah, and yeah, I figure it's fine for us to get Trevino and Stevenson out of the way because I do think once we get past the starters, that's going to be where the real conversations start. To be honest with you, so those two are pretty much locked in. Trevino's, like you said, a veteran. He's very good defensively, and I think that can only help Tyler Stevenson as he continues to develop and become a much better catcher. He still has some times where he stabs at the ball, where he gets a little bit lazy with his footwork, but I think that will continue to change, continue to get better. And as long as they can both stay healthy, I think they're good. And what I love about Trevino, Joe, is he can start if needed. If we get a season, we were blessed with a full season of Tyler Stevenson last year after many, many different injuries. So having Trevino as a guy who can truly be a starter if you need to, he's not going to be the level of Stevenson, but he will be able to contribute, I think, as a solid 9 batter and as a great defensive catcher. So like we've talked about with that signing, Joe, or not signing, trade. Gosh, I keep saying signing. Trade. I think they got potentially one of the best backups you could get, honestly. Very happy with that one. So, yeah, we'll move on, though. I was going to go around the diamond, Joe, but I think maybe we just go to shortstop because that's the other one that I think we're both locked in on. You want to give me your starter?
Yeah, Santiago Espinal, the guy I love so much.
Dude, you might as well just go for every position. The man can do it.
No, I mean, I do like Santiago Espinal. And just to remind everyone, if they didn't listen last year, I stuck up for him a lot because I liked the little things he did, and I thought he's a perfect utility player who was thrust into too much action. But as a utility player, I like him, and heck, I mean, the WAR doesn't say that, but if you look at a batting average, everything else, he played awesome. I don't care what the WAR says on him, just watching him. But it's Ellie. That's what they've said for a long time now. A lot of people want to change his position, but I think the range he offers is unique. There might be a conversation down the road about moving him to outfield or something. I don't know. I just whatever makes his career longer. But to be honest, with the Reds not really being, I guess, over the top interested in signing him for the future, it seems like they're kind of open to it, but really don't think they're going to be able to do it. Changing positions doesn't make sense for them because you're probably changing positions for him to go excel somewhere else, whereas right now he plays pretty decent shortstop, and that range does save you a lot of runs. Excited to see him fix the hole in his swing. Excited to see if that keeps up and see if his eye gets better at the plate. Looking for, I know there could be a step like where he does take a huge step forward and he is the best player in baseball, like Terry Francona wants him to be. But I think even seeing a marginal step forward is very good based on last year being so good. So if he hits close to 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases, which I think is well within his capabilities to do, I think we'll be sitting here talking about him as possibly an MVP candidate at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think he's a lock, obviously, at shortstop. I think one of the things that I know he's been working on has been his defense, Joe. And my biggest problem with Ellie is that, there are times when he does the incredible, and then there are times when he loses focus and can't do the mundane, right? And I want him to be locked in on every pitch, right? Not just in the big moments. And so that's where I am looking for him to improve defensively. Offensively, we've all talked about his strikeouts. He had the most in baseball last year. We all know this. That is what it is. But if he can cut that down by even like 10, 15%, right? If he can just put the ball in play more, I don't even care if he hits 40 home runs, Joe. If he hits 35 home runs, 35 home runs, but his average is like 280 and he's an absolute menace on the base paths, right? I think that's going to create more value than even those 10 extra home runs because, I could see him being a 285, 35 home runs, 70 plus stolen bases guy with 100 plus RBIs. Like, what I would love to see from him, Joe, is to be the number 3 hitter one day. I don't know if that's maybe the best position for him, but it would give him more RBI potential, and I know that would maybe take away from his stolen bases. We'll have to see. But I wouldn't hate seeing him be a guy who you could slot into the 3 or the 4 spot to see him become, a true 3-hole hitter. I'm happy with him being in the 2-hole. I think that's probably where he's going to be for a while just because of his great combination of speed and power. But, in my ideal world, it would be awesome to see him be that number 3-hole hitter that can really drive in some more runs, really just be the Bobby Witt Jr. that we saw last year. I mean, I saw Bobby Witt Jr. in person last year, Joe, and that guy is so freaking impressive. And I think Ellie can be that. Ellie was and still is a lot more raw. And we still have to continue to refine what he is doing. But you're not wrong. He already finished. Didn't he finish top 10 in MVP votes last year? I believe he did. So, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in top 6 if he's healthy and if he does take, like you said, a marginal step forward. If he does the impossible, most likely, the unlikely, I should say, and he finds a way to hit like 290 this year with 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases, maybe even 80, and he plays great defense, then this Reds team is going to be one of the best teams in baseball, and the Reds ownership, I will call them, I'm not going to call them out by name, but they will need to go and take out a very hefty bank loan in preparation. That's all I'll say, because losing this man, dude, he's bringing them so much money. We'll talk about this another day, but I'm telling you right now that Ellie De La Cruz is going to bring them more than enough money to be able to pay for things because of him specifically. So I'm hopeful that they will realize that and realize that it is quite the investment when your ballpark is full every single game, because this guy is just that has to be watched every game, and it makes the team actually be worth watching. We'll see. Everybody likes to say that some of these owners are businessmen and they're businessmen first, but if they were really businessmen first, Joe, they would understand that having butts in the seats and fans dedicated and looking in on stuff is going to make them a lot more money than just passively sitting by and, oh no, I maybe took too big of a risk one time. Hate it, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. He needs to be signed long term. If I never want to do this, but if I were to carry water for the owners, it would be saying that this is very much a time where professional baseball is at a crossroads. We just mentioned the ESPN canceling that contract, or mutually agreeing with ESPN to cancel that contract, and we got this FanDuel Sports Network for the time being, but that doesn't seem like a long term thing. I don't know about you, but that's kind of how it feels like to me. So maybe they're kind of worried about the future, but the best time to sign Ellie De La Cruz to a long-term extension was last year. The next best time is now. So, And that would be the best thing to do for this franchise. I think he's going to be a very, very good player. And to your point, I think I want him and Matt McClain to be bat 1-2 for the long haul here. I could see a reason for him to bat 3, but I think as teams get more and more into the analytics and seeing how batting third is great for the first time around the order, it's not always the best to do it that way, especially I think you just get more at bats if you're 1-2, and that's how I mentioned I like watching the Braves. I'm not a Braves fan, but I like watching the Braves games when they have some of their best players sitting at 1 and 2 at the top of the order with Ronald Acuna and some of their other hitters at the top of the lineup too, when they're healthy, which they have not been for a long time. So either way, whether he's 1, 2, or 3, he needs to be at the top of the order, giving us some help. And I do think that he has the potential to take that at least marginal step forward, and if not, just kind of really bust out here with Terry as his manager. And one more point, Rob, because I know we've been going on for a little bit here. The mundane plays point you made was amazing, because I remember last year, when, I forget who was trying to get to second, and he waited to step on the bag until the last second and almost missed the out. Someone on the other team was running to second, and he played chicken with him basically. And there was almost a runner who saved second. That stuff's not going to fly under Terry. Terry's going to say, hey, if you want to be great, you got to pay attention to the small stuff and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of room for growth and maturity, and with his defense, as you mentioned, and with his ability to see the ball and limit those strikeouts. So very excited for Ellie this season, MVP possibly, and we'll see how he does.
Yeah, and let's not forget, the Reds could theoretically sign Ellie through his age, because this is age 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, through his age probably 28 or 29 season. Most really good baseball players start to hit their peaks between ages 28 and 32. That's when they are really, really, really good. And he could very easily hit the market again, and his age 28 or 29 season, the Reds could add 1 or 2 more years onto his deal, buy out his pre-arb and his arbitration, and be fine. And that wouldn't require them to have the $1 billion contract that people are so afraid of. So just throwing that out there. I was checking his contract status. The kid's only 23 years old. He's got plenty of time, guys, to make a ton of money. This man's going to be a multi-$100 million man. If he continues, Guys fall off. People forget that. And it happens a lot more than people realize, where you have an outstanding season and then you kind of fall off here. I don't think that's going to be Ellie, to be clear, but it does happen. So we'll move on. Let's go to second base, Joe. The guy who will be fielding the ball from Ellie De La Cruz. I'm going to name two guys who I think are in contention for this position. I think it's Matt McLain, and I think it's Gavin Lux. I'll give mine. I think Matt McLain is going to be the starter. I think what he has shown when he is healthy is that this guy could be a sneaky top 25, top 30 baseball player. I love the comparison to Dustin Pedroia that Terry Francona made, because that does come from a pretty high standard, a pretty high place for Terry. I believe he is on record as saying that is one of his all-time favorite players that he's ever coached. He is pushing very hard for him to make a Hall of Fame push as well, because he just loves him that much and he thinks he's really good. Yes, McLain is a little bit shorter, but that doesn't matter. We've seen people like Jose Altuve who can be that kind of guy, right? We've seen, obviously, Pedroia, who has been mentioned as well. And I want to remind people, in his one full season with the team, not even full season, 89 games, this kid batted .290. He was walking a decent clip. He had 16 home runs, 23 doubles, 50 RBIs, and had 100 hits. Guys, I don't think that Jeimer Candelario had 100 hits all of last season. And he played through most of it. So this is not just the crap on Jeimer Candelario train. Yeah, he only had 96 hits. So it's not just to crap on him. When Matt McLain is healthy, and he is still very young, he is only 25 years old, he has a potential seriously to be a top 30 baseball player. And I don't think there's any reason if he is not healthy, for him not to be the opening day starting second baseman right now.
Yeah, you got to give him the shot based on what he showed you 2 years ago. Last year's obviously a wash with everything, but give him the chance. If there is something mentally from the injury or just physically from the injury that's holding him back, it's nice to have Gavin Lux who can step in. I think his signing is going to be very important in terms of flexibility, because with some of the infield spots besides Ellie, pretty much all the infield spots besides Ellie, there is question marks about who's going to be playing there, if the young guys we have there are going to be playing well enough to have that job. All those questions are there. So I think McLain gets the start at second base, and then you can kind of address that if he's not playing well because of one of those two factors, with the mental, physical, whatever injury. Yeah, he's shown very good average. He's shown some decent pop for a player of his size. I like that he's playing second base and Ellie's playing shortstop. I think it'll save us more runs, even though I think McLain is a better fundamental defender than Ellie is, and that is something that should be noted. But I do think that this is the optimal place you would position them for right now and for the future, to be honest, for the development. So a big fan of Matt McLain. I think he's a virtual lock to be the opening day second baseman. I would say that just beware of possibly the injury coming back, because the last year's injury kind of came out of nowhere, and then it kept him out longer than we thought. And I just want to make sure we're not like pushing him to come back too fast. But he's like that. This seems to be the team is comfortable building around Ellie and not McLain for the time being.
Yeah, and I will say, for those of you who may worry about the shoulder injury, most of the time when you have a labrum tear and you give it the full time that it needs, which is I think what they did to allow him to really come back and be healthy with it, as long as that oblique injury doesn't come back, that's the one I am more concerned about with him, to be honest with you. Because most of the time when you have a tear of even a smaller variety like McLain had, the surgery strengthens that portion of his arm. So if he can keep that and be fine, and if he can keep his oblique from having an issue, I think Matt McLain can be a very healthy baseball player. We'll see, but the oblique is the one that's more of an issue for me, because it's like a hamstring. It comes back when you least expect it, and it comes back more frequently than you would like. So let's move on, Joe. I'm going to let you pick a corner. Which corner are you going?
This is, oh boy.
Yeah, I
don't know which corner's better to pick. All right, I'm going to pick third base because, as I mentioned earlier, I think this guy needs to play every day. He can't play third base. I'm going Gavin Lux at third base. Hit pretty well last year. He's got a good history of hitting the ball well. And your other options at the position, I mean, I do love Santiago Espinal, but I do think he's best as a utility guy. Well, Marte, we just don't know how he's going to be. CES says he wants to fight for some more time at third base this year, which is smart on his part to try to position himself as a corner infielder and
Mm-hmm.
having versatility. I'm not sure that's going to work out. Cooper Bowman's been playing some first base as well, so we'll see. I don't know what the idea is for him. We'll probably get to him later when we talk about some of these guys, but it seems to me that if you want the best offense on the field, at least from a baseline of we know what we're going to get out of this guy, Gavin Lux is the guy you got to take there. I again, people who saying he shouldn't play every day, I get that because we have other guys, and maybe he won't play every day if some of the young guys do step up. But as we're sitting here right now, I think he is the best bet to give us the best chance to win at third base. Hasn't played a ton of third base in his career, but I do think he can be successful there. It's kind of the issue here is I think there could be someone else that I'm going to put in the outfield who could play third base as well. He's played third base in his past, but I don't know. I think Gavin Lux, I would trust him more in the infield and trust the other guy, Spencer Steer, if anyone didn't know already, in the outfield. So I'm going to say him at third base. I don't know exactly where he's going to play, but I do want him in the lineup most days.
Yeah, I want him to be in the lineup too. I don't mind him starting at third base this season. Maybe if his defense starts to waver a little bit, maybe Espinal does get the opportunity or Steer, right? I don't know, but I am also putting him there. I will say, while he is known for his offense, he has never had a negative defensive WAR. In any of the seasons that he has played, he has bounced around a lot of different positions. I really genuinely think that he could be a really good guy for the Reds to have starting and playing third base every day. And the only other note that I will make is I would love to see who's got the better arm between him and McLean, and kind of see what happens there with that one. I'm not against and I'm not for necessarily for Gavin Lux to take any time away from Matt McLean at second base, to be honest with you. But it's just something to be, noting. The hot corner is a very different type of position than most people like to give it credit for in terms of defensive prowess, right? There are a lot of lumbering guys who can kind of get away with things at third base, but if you got a very solid third baseman defensively, it takes away a lot of bunting opportunities, right? It takes away a lot of, it takes away a lot of different kind of problems that you may have that you don't really notice right away. Also, having Ellie there gives you a lot more coverage to where you can kind of focus on covering the line more often as well. And Ellie can kind of, cover that shortstop third base gap a little bit more. So, I think Lux has to be in there. They traded for him, I think, with the idea that he'd be a starter. I don't think that they traded for him with the hopes that he could be another backup guy. So, to me, it's got to be Lux as well. And we'll talk, like we said, about backups here in a little bit. I'm going to give my first base, Joe, because I think you're going to be surprised at who it's going to be. I'm putting Spencer Steer at first base. I think Spencer Steer is a very good first baseman. And I think if he is given the opportunity to just play one position for a good portion of the year, then I think it's going to help him. And I think it's going to make him a better player. Now, I think that he will see a lot of time in the outfield still. I think he may see some time at third base. I think, depending on injuries, he may even see some time at second base. I understand that. But one thing we do know is that Spencer Steer is going to be in the opening day lineup, period. Right? There are question marks about some other guys, but Spencer Steer is not one of those guys for me. We know he is going to play. And I actually think he might be the best defensive first baseman that we have on the roster. And defense was a bit of a problem last year. If you have an infield of a healthy Matt McLean, of an Ellie De La Cruz, of a solid Gavin Lux, and Spencer Steer, I think you actually have a really good infield at that point. And you are able to have some guys who I think can really move things forward for you as a club. And it's not that the other guys who we're going to talk about as potential backups are not more likely to get the first base spot. But if I'm telling you the lineup that I want and the team that I want to have, I'm putting Spencer Steer at first base. And I'm saying, dude, you're going to play here most of the time, and we're going to put you in left field sometimes. But other than that, you're starting at first base this season. You're going to do a lot of great things for us. Appreciate you. Let's go have you hit 30 plus bombs and bat 250, plus this season. So he is my first baseman right now. I know that a lot of people are going to say that I'm stupid or that I'm wrong. It's just that I played first base. I'm not an expert at it, but I have watched a lot of, stuff on how to be a good first baseman. And Spencer Steer is a very solid first baseman. He's got good range. He's got a pretty good arm, obviously, still. And I think he's one of the better scoopers on the team, to be honest with you. He looks more comfortable than CES and Jamer do at first base as well. So that's who I'm putting at first base. Joe, where are you going?
Yeah, I think he's more of a slot for the DH or the outfield, so I'm saving him for a future episode. I do think it's good to have him as a guy who did improve defensively as first baseman last year. He'd not been the greatest the first couple of years, but he was still learning the position, so we'll give him that grace. And last year he did play well, but I think there's too many infielders to fit in and not enough outfielders to fit in, which is why I think he's going to be DH or outfield. Which, again, if he's DH all year, that's awesome because I think they do need someone who's solidified in that position where we've jumped around a lot the last couple of years, and that hasn't been good. I'm going Jamer, first base. Also could be the candidate to be the DH. He is better defensively at first base than he is at third base.
Yes.
That is for sure. And if you're going to hide a guy, hide him at first base. Typically around the league average with fielding percentage, maybe a point or two below in terms of fielding percentage at first base. It seemed, again, this is not necessarily what I would do. This is more what I think is going to happen. Terry seems to like Jamer and the work he put in this offseason, and I think he'll like the veteran leadership. There's an argument he could be the DH as well. That power that he brought, what was it, in May last year was awesome.
Yeah.
For that.
Oh, I think it was June.
June. Was it June?
Yeah.
And he's, I don't know. I think that's going to be the play for him. I don't think he's going to start the season on the bench. So if we're saying, hey, this is what might happen, I think it might be this. Now, something to note, they did give CES a start at first base in one of the spring training games already.
Mm-hmm.
He could be in play there. As you mentioned, you could put Steer there as well. But it is looking like it'll be one of those three at first base. Between those three, I would think. So I'll say Candy to start. Not too confident in it. Not confident he's going to have a great year, but based on the quotes we heard from Terry and based on the fact that he likes the veteran leadership, I'll say that I think he's going to start the year opening day first base.
Yeah, and I think maybe we can lump DH into the infield if you would like, Joe, or would you rather it be in the outfield conversation?
It's up to you. Either way.
Well, we'll save it for the outfield. We'll save it for outfield just because we only have 3 positions for the outfield anyways. So, we're talking about 5 this time. So, all right. Yeah, I'll guess we'll go for more. So we have 4 people each right now. I'll talk Candelario. I think he's going to make it. Obviously on the team at this point. I think Terry's trying to hype him up because he had such an awful season last year. I think he's trying to give him confidence, and make it less of a question. If I'm being honest with you, I think he is, I don't know. I would say, if I had to guess, I would say between him and CES, there's like a 50-50 shot of who's going to play first. And Spencer Steer kind of sneaks in there with a little bit of that percentage, right? So like maybe it's 40-40-20, right, with Steer, right? And again, that was my personal preference. I had him there because I think maybe they end up deciding to just throw him out there because maybe they don't end up giving CES the opening day roster spot. We'll have to see. But I think Candelario is pretty much a lock for a roster spot. Where he's going to go, I don't know. I can't see them. If they start him over Gavin Lux at third base, Joe, I might cry at this point. I just don't know if I could handle that, to be honest with you. I don't see the point. I don't understand it. I am pretty against that, to be honest with you. And I hope that I'm right in terms of, I don't think that he's a bad player necessarily, but I don't think he's the guy that the Reds are hoping that he's going to be. And so we'll have to see if he is going to do more, but I'll just to do the candy part, I'll put him in there. He's my number 5 guy. My number 6, then I'll move on is Santiago Espinal. I think he is an absolute lock, personally, Joe. I can totally see him making this club without really much contention, to be honest with you. The guy can play second, short, and third. We even saw him a little bit in left field last year, if I remember correctly. So he's willing to play. His bat got a lot better. He looks confident, and I think he's probably your first guy up in terms of any of those three positions being lost. So if McLean, Ellie, or Gavin Lux get hurt, I think that he slides into whatever spot that is, unless, I don't know, if Ellie gets hurt, maybe they move McLean to short, Espinal to third, and Gavin Lux to second, something like that, right? Some combination where, he comes in. But I think he is your fourth middle / third base infielder for me. I don't see why not. He's great defensively. He, I think, brings a lot of energy to this club as well. And I just really like the way he plays, Joe. You turned me on to him for sure. I really was. I didn't dislike him, but the more and more that you talked about him, the more I was like, okay, I need to pay more attention to the little things like you were talking about. And he is literally a home run trade for the Reds. I have not seen, they do this every once in a while where they find a guy completely just out of nowhere, and this is that guy for me. I love him. I hope they keep him for a while because he's an awesome utility guy.
Yeah, I think people's expectations of utility guys are just out of whack. Like, it's not like, and the same thing happened with a lot of guys in the past, like Juan Castro for a long time there, and Ryan Friel. You're not necessarily expecting a guy to come in and be the greatest offensive threat. You're expecting him to be solid defensively, and he did have some errors early on. But I think he is a good role player in what you're trying to do. He's a guy who could end up starting, I mean, with injuries and everything else, he could end up starting another 120 games this year. Whether we move someone to DH, we need him to step in. Being able to play second, third, and short is huge. And I think it's good for a lot of reasons. We have a little bit of depth in terms of interior defenders. In that, I mean, Cooper Bowman, who I don't know if you saw this, but they put him at first base. And he's traditionally been, I mean, he's played a little outfield, but mostly second base, shortstop. So that's kind of weird to me, but he's the guy that I think, if, like you said, anyone goes down in that second base, third base, shortstop, you have pretty good confidence that he can at least be a solid Major League Baseball player, which is saying a lot after some of the guys we've trotted out there the last several years. So, love Santiago Espinal. Again, I'm not expecting him to hit even 250 next year, but if he can hit 230 and give you good defense as a backup, I think you have to be happy with that.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I guess, with moving Spencer to the outfield, Joe, that actually only leaves us with one or two more spots, depending on how you want to do the outfield. So I'll let you talk next on this one. Who do you have next? Because right now, just to give everybody a quick recap, we have Stevenson and Trevino as your two catchers. You have Jamer as well at first base, Matt McLean at second, Gavin Lux at third, and Ellie at shortstop, with Espinal as your primary backup right now. I have Spencer Steer playing in the infield, but I do count him as a partial outfielder as well, so I'll take him out for now just so that we have that extra spot or two, depending on how you want to go. But we have 8 players right now, regardless, Joe, who are there. So who's your next person that is going to be on this squad?
Yeah, this is much harder by the fact that Candy did play third in his only appearance in spring so far. I think it's CES. Like, they seem to like him. I do think they moved Cooper Bowman. They let him play first base. I don't know if you saw Cam Collier play first base too the other day. So it seems like they're trying to position some competition for backup first base, whether that is for Spencer Steer or Jamer or one of them's DH. I don't know, but that's what it seems like they're positioning themselves for. Gonna go CES because he does have a lot of potential. I do think he hit minor league pitching very well. Last year was a disaster, and then the injury happens. Maybe that'll be a good thing to kind of get him to kind of like come back with a fresh mind this year. I like the ability to play third. I don't think they'll use him at third unless they're absolutely desperate, as in like, oh, well, Gavin Lux got hurt, and then Matt McLean got hurt, and Santiago Espinal has to play second, so we need someone to play third, and Spencer Steer, we want him in the outfield still. Something like that. It's good that he has the versatility, but I don't think they're going to use it that way. He's got some good pop in his bat that I want to see back this season. So if he can provide that off the bench, I do think he's a candidate to start the year on the Reds, even though I think we're going to have some young guys in AAA that people are mad about. But I do think he can start the year in Major League Baseball. And I also think plays well. I think there's a chance that he takes over that first base spot for Jamer or Spencer Steer or anyone else. With Spencer Steer, he moves somewhere else. With Jamer, maybe he moves to DH or becomes more of a utility guy, which is not something you want to be paying. That amount of money is not something you want to pay a utility guy. But Terry wants to win, and if that's something that CES can do, I think he'll give him that chance.
Yeah, I think I mean he's the next guy for me as well. To be honest with you, I think that he is. I don't want to write him off because of a bad start when he was playing through an injury to last season, right? I think that that's tough, and I don't think it's exactly fair either. And I know not everything is fair. I'm not naive enough to think differently, but I just don't think he's as bad as maybe we all think he might be based on just that injury. Like I said, he's got plenty of pop. He's really got a nice swing, Joe. And I think that he's a guy who, if you're asking me personally, I would be ecstatic if he takes over the first base position. I think that would be awesome because I think that he has the potential to be a 40 home run guy. I don't know if he will, but he has the ability to be that kind of a guy, especially in Great American Ballpark. And if we're being honest here, right, Joe, if he ends up being your 8 or 9 hitter, like your 8th or 9th best hitter, you're in a good spot, right? Like his potential is definitely there. The problem is his floor is what scares me. And I think we saw that last season. And his floor is a guy that, yeah, maybe think about putting on, that you maybe think about putting on your bench as a right-handed hitter against lefties. But, weirdly, last year he hit righties better than lefties. Now he had a lot more at bats, but even still, both of his home runs last year were against righties. So I want to see him grow. I think he had maybe too much pressure on him. And because of that, I'm actually fine with them having him start on the bench and get some starts here and there. I wouldn't hate him getting some DH time, but like I said, we'll talk about the DH on next week's episode. So I'm cool with CES being the last guy. For me personally, Joe, technically you have one spot left if you would like to give it. I think I know who you're going to go with, but
I have one spot. Who I miss?
So right now you have 8 infielders. So if you want to go with a 9th.
Boy.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
to Steer, that's where Steer makes this tough, right? Is because like if Steer plays in left field, right, then you have 5 outfielders, right? But since he can play both, you kind of can mix him in. Right now we have 9 because Christian Encarnacion Strand is your 9th, and then that leaves you with 4 more spots, at least 3 for the outfield, right? And probably a 4th outfielder for the most part. So we'll have to go through the outfield next time. But yeah, do you want that extra spot if you're bouncing Steer to the outfield?
No, I mean I don't, but that's where we're at. So you're gonna take a player. I would say that there is going to be a battle for the last spot on the roster, and it is going to be a couple of the outfielders we're familiar with last year. Maybe Cooper Bowman, because they did take him in the Rule 5 draft, and he is playing first base, and that is still weird to me that they're doing that. But, if you were to take someone else, I probably would be Cooper Bowman for the infield, because I don't know who else realistically they would take. I mean, I guess you could take Noelvi Marte, but I would prefer him to start in AAA. As you mentioned with CES, I think there is a way you can get him enough at bats. But if you have 2 guys that you're trying to develop to be, hopefully future stars for us, I don't think there's enough at bats to go around for Noelvi Marte. And I'd rather him start in AAA with that. I'd rather have someone like Cooper Bowman, who we took in the Rule 5 draft, who I don't think we have high expectations for. I think if we can get him to be like a decent role player, that's great. I think that's who I would go with, but I think it will come down to, like, I will not take that last spot, and I will let him and the last couple outfielders that, like I said, it's going to be an absolute war for that last spot on the roster because I feel pretty good about Espinal. We both feel like Trevino's a lock. CES we just talked about, where he's not total lock, but I think we both feel comfortable. But after that, with the DH and then the last bench spot, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. And we'll be excited, like I said, to talk about the outfield and the DH on the next episode. I'm not going to take any extra guys either right now. I think that fourth and fifth outfield spot are going to be really contentious. There's going to be a lot of discussions to be had. I do think there's a guy who I do quickly want to call out in a positive way. I think Edwin Arroyo is a guy you will have to watch for at some point this season, especially depending on injuries. He's one of the guys, along with Marte. I think if you have to do, AAA with, CES, Noel V. Marte, and Edwin Arroyo down there in AAA, I think that's a heck of an infield to draw people from. I will say they do have Spencer Steer listed on the 40-man on the main Reds website as an outfielder, so you can take that as you will. Like I said, I actually think he's best at first base for his future position, but I don't know what they're going to do with Spencer Steer yet. We'll have to see. So then that's going to lock it in for us, Joe. We'll go around the diamond real quick. I'll give you guys the final ones here. Starting catcher, Tyler Stevenson. First base, Jamer Candelario. Second base, Matt McLean. Shortstop, Ellie De La Cruz. And third base, Gavin Lux. So we'll have to see what you guys think. I guess I'll do the backups real quickly, too. Trevino, Santiago Espinal, and Christian Encarnacion Strand are your three backups as well. If they carry another infielder, I'll take Spencer Steer. Otherwise, well, you guys already know one of my picks for next week and Joe's. It's going to be Spencer Steer in the outfield as well. So, sorry, spoiler alert. Yeah, man, I mean, look, here's the reality, right, Joe, is that it's going to be fun. These last roster spots are going to be really interesting because there are MLB-worthy guys fighting for them, right? We are not talking about guys who it's just like, oh, I hope this guy can bat 180 and play okay defense. Like, no, these are guys who could theoretically start on either some bad teams or work their way and be really good for the Reds. So do you have any wise thoughts before we work our way out of here, Joe?
Boy, do I. One bad, one good. We'll start with the bad. They released the rankings of wins for MLB teams in the postseason since 1998 when they went to 30 teams. Reds are in last to the Pirates. We're number 2 wins since 1998. The Pirates have 3.
And we gave one of them to them, too.
That's right. That we are trying to, again, I'm not being facetious. I think we're trying to get rid of a curse here because we just, as Reds fans, have not had as much joy, and part of it is the salary cap in the sport, but also just owners not willing to go all in. So hopefully Terry can help make up for that. And then the good one of the stories of the first week or so of spring training, Zach Maxwell, the big man, 6'6", 275 pounds. He's 24 years old. He has some pretty good stuff, it looks like. I don't think he's going to be on the roster right away, but his nickname is Big Sugar. So we talked about some of the nicknames last week with our bullpen with Scoots McGoots and Mr. Rogers. So we might have a very good nickname bullpen if he ever comes up and makes an impact for us.
Dude, Big Sugar looks awesome. I've remembered his name from the past, so it's good to see. He'll probably be in AAA, let's be honest. But if he can do well in AAA, you never know. It'd be pretty cool to see Big Sugar out there throwing some games. It reminds me, who was the other like really big guy that we had for like a year or two there in the 20 teens?
Jumbo Diaz?
Jumbo Diaz, baby. That's who I was thinking of. Thank you. Oh, boy.
Jumbo Diaz, Todd Coffey. It's bringing back a lot of memories with some of the bigger guys. So,
dude, even Mr. Weathers himself, great closer, actually. Not great, but solid at times. But now his son's in the MLB. That's always fun. So, Joe, I think that is going to wrap it up for us on today's episode. We appreciate it as always. If you guys can let us know if there's anything else you'd like for us to discuss before we head into spring training. We are more than happy to put it onto our itinerary, is what I'll call it, for each episode. We're having a blast doing this, and we're getting ready for Reds baseball. We are heading into the month of March, Joe. We are just a few weeks away from the start of the MLB season, and we've got a lot more still to cover before we get to that. So I hope you guys will join us. But that is going to wrap it up for us on this episode of Reds Rundown. So with that, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.